Tonight's story comes from the legendary writer Satyajit Ray, a master of mystery and imagination. This tale is called Remembrain, a story where science meets fear, and memory itself becomes dangerous. January 2nd. What a beautiful morning. The sun is shining brightly everywhere, and the blue sky is dotted with fluffy white clouds. It feels as if autumn has arrived by mistake. Looking at this sky fills my heart with a pure, astonishing wonder, much like the feeling of holding a freshly laid chicken egg. Of course, there was another reason for my joy. After a long time, I finally get to rest. My machine was completed just this morning. I've returned from the garden to my laboratory and have been sitting for a long time, quietly staring at the machine, filled with a deep sense of peace. From the outside, it doesn't look like much. It looks like a modern hat or a helmet. Inside this helmet's shell, there are 72,000 intricate wires forming a complex neural network. This machine is the result of 3.5 years of tireless effort. Let me give you a simple example to explain what it does. Just a little while ago, as I was sitting in my chair, my servant Prahlad came in with coffee. I asked him, "What fish did you bring from the market on the morning of the 7th of last month?" Prahlad scratched his head and said, "Sir, I don't remember." I then had him sit in the chair, placed the helmet on his head, and pressed a button. Prahlad's body shivered for a moment and became completely still. His eyes took on a fixed, vacant stare. Then I asked him the question again. "Prahlad, what fish did you bring from the market on the morning of the 7th? There was no change in Prahlad's gaze. Only his lips parted and his tongue moved, uttering a single word, "Tengra." After I removed the helmet, Prahlad stared at me blankly for a while, then suddenly jumped up from the chair with a big smile and said, "I remember, sir. Tengra." This machine can retrieve any lost memory of any person, not just Prahlad. A normal person's brain is said to store approximately 100 trillion memories, some clear and some hazy. These include images, events, names, faces, tastes, smells, songs, stories, and countless bits of detailed information. A normal person's memories from before the age of 2 fade away very early. My own memory, however, is many times sharper than that of a normal person. I even have some memories from when I was 11 months old. Of course, a few of my very early childhood memories had also become blurred. For example, when I was 1 year and 3 months old, I saw Mr. Blackwell, the magistrate of that time, with a stick and a dog, walking along the banks of the Ushri River. The dog was white, but I couldn't remember its breed. Today I put on the machine and recalled the scene. Immediately, the dog's appearance became clear, and it told me it was a bull terrier. I have named the machine Remembrain, which means the machine that helps the brain to remember. I wrote an article about it yesterday and sent it to the journal Nature in England. Let's see what happens. February 23rd. My article has been published in Nature, and ever since, I've been receiving countless letters. People from Europe, America, Russia, and Japan have all expressed interest in seeing the machine. I've been requested to demonstrate it at a scientific conference in Brussels on May 7th. Many in the scientific community are finding it hard to believe that such a machine could exist, although they know of my capabilities. The truth is, the intricate mystery of memory remains beyond the grasp of science. I myself have only been able to understand that when a piece of information enters the brain, it carves out a place for itself as a memory. I believe each memory is a chemical substance akin to an atom, and each memory has a unique chemical structure and formula. As time passes, memories fade because no substance can remain in the same state forever. My machine channels electrical energy into the brain to revitalize the memory substance, bringing back old memories. Some might ask how I created such a machine without completely unraveling the mystery of memory. My answer is that we know 100 times more about electricity today than we did a century ago. Yet despite this incomplete knowledge, the 19th century saw the invention of astonishing electrical devices. My Remembrain machine was created in the same way. After the article was published in Nature, I received one letter that I found particularly amusing. An American billionaire industrialist, Hiram Horenstein, wrote that while writing his autobiography, he discovered he couldn't clearly remember the events before he was 27. He offered me a generous fee to use my machine to help him recall those events. I wrote back in a polite tone that I did not create this machine to satisfy the whims of eccentric American millionaires. March 4th, half an hour after reading about a terrible accident in Switzerland, which saddened me, a long telegram on the same subject arrived. This must be what they call telepathy. The news was this: two famous scientists, Otto Lubin of Switzerland and Dr. Hieronymus Schering of Austria, were traveling in a car from Landeck, Austria to Wallenstadt, Switzerland. For some time, these two scientists had been conducting classified research on a secret subject. The driver was in the front, and Lubin and Schering were in the back. The car plunged into a ravine while driving on a mountain road. A shepherd from a nearby village found the wrecked car 1,000 feet below the road. Amazingly, Dr. Schering survived. His body got stuck in a bush only 30 feet below the road. As soon as news of the accident reached Wallenstadt, the Swiss biochemist Norbert Busch rushed to the scene. Lubin and Schering were on their way to Busch's home for a few days of rest. Busch brought an unconscious Schering back to his house in his spacious Mercedes. This much was in the paper. The rest I learned from Busch's telegram. I should mention that I have known Busch for 10 years. We met at a scientific conference in Florence. Busch wrote that although Schering's body has almost no injuries, a head injury has caused him to lose his memory completely. Another piece of information is that the car's driver has disappeared, along with all the research papers. The attempts of doctors, psychologists, and hypnotists to restore Schering's memory have been completely unsuccessful. Busch has asked me to Wallenstadt with my machine immediately. He will cover all expenses. He concluded the telegram by saying, "Dr. Schering is an extraordinarily talented individual. The scientific community will be forever grateful to you if you can restore him to life. Please let me know what you decide as soon as possible. I will not get another chance like this to test and demonstrate the full extent of my machine's capabilities. I must start making preparations for Wallenstadt today. My machine is fully portable. It weighs only 8 kilos. Paying extra for luggage on the plane will not be an issue." March 8th. I arrived in the small town of Wallenstadt, 60 kilometers from my location, at 8:45. I reached Zurich this morning and then drove here in Busch's car along a beautiful path. Breakfast will be served shortly. I am writing in my diary in my room while I have a moment. Biochemist Norbert Busch's house is on 14 acres of land in a picturesque setting full of trees and flowers. The stairs, floors, and walls are all made of wood. I'm in a room on the second floor facing west. When I open the window, I can see the Whalen Lake surrounded by mountains. My machine is on a table beside the bed in a plastic bag. I don't think there will be any lack of hospitality. Just now, Bush's 3-year-old son, Willie, came and gave me a packet of chocolates. The boy is very sweet and sociable. He wanders around humming his own tunes. A few minutes after I got out of the car and greeted everyone, he came up to me, held out a black cigar case, and said, "Cigar?" I don't smoke, but I didn't want to disappoint Willie, so I thanked him and took out a cigar. If I were to smoke, this is the kind I would choose, an excellent Dutch cigar. There are 6 people in the house: Bush, his wife Clara, young Willie, Bush's friend and local school teacher from Satyajit, the affable and quiet Hans Ulrich, doctor, Schering, and his maid, whose name I think is Maria. Besides them, 2 policemen are guarding the house around the clock. Schering is in a room to the east. The landing and the staircase to the ground floor are between our 2 rooms. I did, of course, get a good look at Schering when I arrived. He is a man of medium height, between 45 and 50, with a bald spot at the back of his golden hair. His face is a mix of square and round. When I saw him, he was sitting in a chair by the window, fiddling with a wooden doll. He turned his head when I entered the room, but did not get up from the chair. I understood that he had forgotten even the basic courtesy of getting up when someone enters the room. There was something strange about his eyes. I asked him, "Do you wear glasses?" Schering's left hand automatically went up to his eyes and then came down again. Bush said, "His glasses broke. A new pair has been ordered." After seeing Schering, we went to the living room. After some small talk, Bush sheepishly said, "To be honest, I wasn't very enthusiastic about your machine. I sent you the telegram partly at my wife's request." "Is your wife a scientist too?" I asked, looking at Clara. Clara smiled and replied, "Not at all. I work as my husband's secretary. I wanted you to come because I have deep respect for India. I've read many books about your country and know a lot about it. I believe that if Bush had any doubts about my machine, they will be gone by the end of today. This afternoon, we will try to open the closed door of Schering's memory." Now, I couldn't help but ask about the driver. Bush said, "The police are investigating. The driver could be hiding in one of 2 places. One is 4.5 kilometers west of the accident site, in a forest called In the Forest. For the driver is ongoing in both places, as well as in the mountains." "How far is the accident site from here?" 85 kilometers. "The driver must have found shelter somewhere because it snows there at night. I fear he might have an accomplice and could have already passed the papers on to them." March 8th, 10:30 p.m. The fire is burning in the fireplace. Outside, a strong, cold wind is blowing. I can hear the whooshing sound of the wind, even though the window is closed. Bush is stunned by the display of my scientific genius tonight. It's hard to say who is my bigger fan now, him or his wife. At 6 o'clock this evening, we went to Schering's room with my machine. He was still sitting in the chair, slumped over. When we entered, he stared at us blankly. Bush greeted him and said in a light, joking tone, "Today we're going to put a hat on you, okay? It won't cause you any discomfort. You can sit in your chair just as you are." "A hat? What kind of hat?" Schering asked, his voice grave yet melodic, with a hint of unease. "Just look." I took the machine out of the bag. Bush took it from my hand and gave it to Schering. Schering fiddled with it like he had with the toy this morning, then handed it back to me. "It won't hurt, will it? The injection the other day hurt." Assured that it wouldn't hurt, he seemed somewhat relieved and leaned back in the chair, his hands resting by his sides. I didn't see any other injuries on his exposed skin, except for a plaster on a wound on his neck. It was no trouble putting the helmet on Schering. Then, as I pressed the red button, the battery attached to the helmet turned on. Schering shivered, and his body became as rigid as wood. His eyes stared. vacantly at the fire in the fireplace. There was an eerie silence in the room now. Except for Sharing, I could hear everyone's rapid breathing. Clara was standing by the door. The nurse stood motionless behind the bed, looking at Sharing in amazement. Bush and Ulrich leaned forward anxiously, standing on either side of Sharing's chair. I spoke to Bush in a low voice. "Do you want to ask the questions, or should I? It will work either way. You start." I took a small stool from the corner of the room and sat facing Sharing. Then I asked, "What is your name?" Sharing's lips moved. "Hieronymus Heinrich Sharing," came the answer. "For the first time," Bush exclaimed in a choked voice. "He said his own name for the first time." I asked the second question. "What is your profession?" "Professor of physics." "Where were you born?" "Austria, Mukan, Innsbruck." I gave Bush a questioning look. Bush nodded, indicating that the answers were correct. I turned back to Sharing. "What is your father's name?" "Karl Dietrich Sharing." "Do you have any other siblings?" "I have a younger sister. My older brother passed away." "When did he pass away?" "In the First World War, October 1st, 1917. I looked at a stunned Bush between questions, and his slight nods confirmed that all of Sharing's answers were correct. "Did you go to Landeck?" "Yes." "For what purpose?" "I had work with Professor Lubin." "What work?" "Research." "On what subject?" "BX377. That's the code name for the research." I moved on with the questions. "Was the research successful?" "Yes." "What was it?" "We discovered the formula for a new type of atomic weapon." "Were you coming to Wallenstadt after completing the work?" "Yes." "Did you have the research papers with you?" "Yes." "And the formula?" "Yes." "There was an accident on the way?" "Yes." "What happened?" Bush put his hand on my shoulder. "I know why." For some time, I had noticed a subtle restlessness in Sharing. He licked his lips once. His eyelids seemed about to flutter. The veins in his forehead were also bulging. Sharing stopped speaking. His breathing became rapid. I believe that an apathetic anxiety arose in him after revealing the secret research subject. I pressed the green button and shut off the battery. It would be unwise to ask any more questions in this state. The rest can wait until tomorrow. As soon as I removed the helmet, Sharing's head fell back. He let out a long sigh, closed his eyes, and then opened them a moment later, looking around and said, "Cigar? A cigar?" I wiped the sweat from Sharing's forehead. Bush seemed embarrassed. He cleared his throat and said, "There are no cigars. No one in this house smokes cigars. Will you have a cigarette?" Sharing didn't take it. Ulrich had taken out a cigarette from his pocket and offered it to him. I said, "Did you have your own cigar case?" "Yes, I did," Sharing said. He seemed exhausted and agitated. "A black case?" Yes. "Then Willie has it. Clara, would you mind looking for it?" Clara immediately went to find her son. The nurse took Sharing by the arm and helped him lie down on the bed. Bush went to the bed and smiled. "You remember now, don't you?" In reply, Sharing looked at Bush in surprise. Then he said in a slow voice, "Remember what?" Sharing's counter-question didn't please me at all. Bush also seemed dumbfounded. He quickly composed himself and said, "You gave the correct answers to our questions." "What questions? What did you ask me?" This time, I gave Sharing a summary of the questions and answers from the last few minutes. Sharing was silent for a while. Then he gently placed his right hand on his head, turned to me, and said, "What did you put on my head?" "Why do you ask?" "It hurts. It feels like countless pins are pricking me." "You already had a head injury. You got hurt while rolling down the side of the mountain. which is why you lost your past memories. Sharing looked at me foolishly and said, "What are you talking about? Why would I roll down a mountain?" The three of us exchanged glances. Clara returned. In her hand was the cigar case I had seen. She gave it to Sharing and said apologetically, "My son took it and kept it in his room at some point. I hope you don't mind." Bush cleared his throat again and said, "You must remember that you smoke cigars now, right?" Sharing's eyes closed as he held the cigar case. He really seemed exhausted. We understood it was time to leave his room.